Good evening, friends. This is to welcome you for the teleconferencing on colors in early India. Colors, of course, is something which you are familiar with, the vividness which they bring out of our, nature, environment around us, and so on. We play a major festival of colors, that's Holi, and so on and so forth. Today we actually are focusing on something very specific. With me, I have two research scholars from the Faculty of History, Sanghmitra, who will be presenting her researches on nature of color in ancient India or early India, and Patru, who is from a background of archaeology, and he would be talking a little bit about what he has seen of colors in Ajanta paintings and so on. He has some kind of slides and photographs to show you, which we will be showing you in the due process. To the theme itself, let me start with a big one, that it was actually in the Enlightenment tradition, because we are talking about colors in the context of knowledge production today. I mean, what we are going to present you is a part of a process of knowledge production, that is research which is going on the nature of color in ancient India. So it's in this context that we need to look at here the Marx's critique of Hegel, that Hegel constructed colors purely out of thought. Okay, now that's his critique. Now we need to critique that in terms, and we are critiquing that in a very, very small way, of course, by basically taking up some kind of historical evidences, which Sanghmitra will be bringing it out through her researches, on how the processes of color, especially in the processes of dyeing industry and so on, how in the ancient Indians or the early Indians had this tinctorial capacity, okay, the capacity to bring out colors from nature, both the organic as well as the inorganic nature. Now this placed the ancient industry or the early industry in a very peculiar kind of a relationship vis-a-vis both nature, that is environment, as well as industry. Okay. Now how did this process come about? What were the various social implications of this process? We will be getting to know from Sanghmitra. Then we'll ask Patru to present some of his kind of photographs and ideas about what he sees of color in the Ajanta paintings, and then we'll have a discussion. In the interim period, you can intervene at any point of time, raise your questions, raise your queries, raise your comments. You're most welcome to do so. So now let me immediately turn to Sanghmitra. Sanghmitra, you can start your presentation.
Today we will discuss about the colors in early India. It is basically a research paper in which I have tried to find out what was the main sources of the colors or the dyes. Now, while colors, I am here discussing about the dyes and pigments that were used on the textiles. Basically, in early India, we can see that let me start with the term dye. Dye is the English word. The epistemology of the dye word is a deg or day, which means color. It's an English word basically. So if we trace back the meaning of dye. So in this research paper, what I have tried is to find out, I have pointed out certain basic colors or the primary colors which were used in early India. And the Indian master dyers, they were so efficient to exactly look at the tinctorial properties or the dyeing properties. If we see a flower, it is red in color. But how can you know that red color flower we can procure dye from that color or not? That is the quality the master dyers of India they have mastered through years, and they were very efficient to trace exactly those floras, faunas. So to find out that what was the tinctorial capacities of those floras and faunas. Interestingly, they didn't stop their search to the floras and faunas, but they have made a wide search into the organic world, into the inorganic world. In case of inorganic world, various kind of minerals were used in ancient India, in early India, in the medieval India, and still they are continuing with this tradition of finding out the basic coloring components of various minerals. There were several other organic sources in which we can see that insects was a very important source from which the colors were procured. Beside insects, there were also the plants. So floras, faunas, insects as well as the minerals, these were the very important sources from which the dyes were manufactured in ancient India. Apart from that, here in this research paper I have pointed out to certain basic colors like red, like blue, purple, black, yellow. These were certain basic colors that were used in India from a quite a long period, and in these colors, how these colors were mainly procured by the dyers. This is the basic thirst. In the conclusion, I have showed that how the color was essentially linked with the socio-economic and cultural conditions of the Indian people. In this, we can see that if we see in our daily life, some of the old people says that don't wear black in so and so dates. Why is it so? There are so many kind of prohibitions that are attached to the color dye. But similarly, red color, yellow color, which are always a color of bliss, prosperity, happiness, and so married women in the Indian society are prescribed to wear red and yellow for a prosperous future. So these are the colors which were associated with joy, happiness. Similarly, black was not. Similarly, if we go back to the 10th chapter of the Code of Manu, in this Code of Manu, we can see that there are certain kind of prohibitions which were attached to the indigo, use of indigo color and the purple color. Purple was basically procured from indigo or the Neela. Why is it so? Because it is stated, it has been stated in the Manu that these colors were procured, were extracted after fermentation of the leaves of the indigo plant. So the Brahmin should prohibit themselves from wearing blue color or the purple color. It was also stated that one should stop doing any sort of business with this blue or indigo color. So what we find in the Indian society, there were certain kind of prohibitions attached with the use of blue color. But very contrasting, in the Western world, we can see that purple or blue is the color of royalty. It is associated with divinity, royalty, or it's a pagan color. The Roman emperors were allowed to use purple while he is sitting on the throne. So it's a color of royalty. So there are so many, if we go through our folk tales of our folklores, we can also find that there are so many, the colors are associated with so many festivals, like spring season is a yellow color festival. In the summer you can use white. So, and besides this, with so many occasions, we can see that colors has been an integral part of our social life. So this is a different domain which I am talking about, but basically in this research paper I have tried to find out that how these colors were mainly procured in ancient India, how they were mainly produced. So let me start with the going back to the ancient past. We can have the first evidence. From where we can have the first evidence of colors? Colored clothes. It is basically a red colored cloth, or some people say it is a purple color cloth. Technically or chemically, this is called madder dyed. Color is dyed with a madder, and it's a small fragment which is sticking to a silver vase, and that is the earliest datable evidence of colored of any cotton cloth. It's a basically a cotton cloth which is dyed with madder color, and this is sticking to a silver vase, and this is the earliest datable evidence of the fabric ornamentation with the color. Like when we talk about fabric ornamentation, now we can ornament a cloth by several means. Dyeing is a method. Then another method is also painting, is a use of color only. But the dye or the use of dyes and pigments is a different zone, and the use of painting is a different zone. For painting, the painter is using his brush and pen on the medium, that is a cloth, and in this dyeing, that a thread are dyed, they are weaved, or otherwise the robe or the cloth is dyed in the color. So these are the two different things. Now let's see. This is the first. Now some scholars points out that maybe this cloth was dyed and it was preserved in a silver vase because of the fact that the silver has certain kind of metals which has helped that cloth to be preserved. Now, moving from Mohenjo-daro, in our lexicons we can find several references of dyed clothes, the clothes that were dyed with colors. Pigments, on the other hand, is mainly composed of inorganic matters insoluble in water, and that is applied by painting and by staining the material body. So that is the difference between dyes and pigments. If we see the dyes that are procured from organic and inorganic sources, through several techniques we are able to make certain colors out of it and we are putting it on the clothes. But the pigments are mainly inorganic substances that was insoluble in water and that are applied by the painters by his or her painting brush or by staining the material body. We know that from very early days Indian dyes where the dyes, pigments, this purple color, Neela was one of the very prized commodity in the trade. Like we have the maritime trade with the western world, we have the maritime trade and the overland trade with the China, Japan on one hand, and mainly with the west where there was huge demand of this purple color, blue color, red color, of which is mainly used in India. Why is it so? Because the Indian dyes were very good in quality in the sense that it won't fade. It's a very fast colors. So since they were fast colors, so they were used extensively in the by the western people, and so it is one of the important commodity of trade in the western world. So we find ample number of references in the classical texts. Classical writers are basically the writers who are coming from west to east in India, so they are having an ample number of references. Alexander, who came in 327 BC in India, has made references that though Indian people were basically wearing white clothes, but the Indian dyers were capable of making very colorful clothes, and that is expressed in the colorful turbans of India. Similarly, Megasthenes Indica also makes a similar kind of expression that Indians were mainly wearing white clothes, but colored clothes was in vogue. Now, coming to the Vedic period, in the Atharva Veda, we also find that 1000 BC to 500 BC, in the subsequent period, we find several terms like Kala or Ashigni or indigo, because black and purple was associated with the indigo. From indigo, you can procure both red, blue as well as black. So we find safflower, Manjishtha, Lodra, Haridra. These are all the terms which we find in the Atharva Veda.
These are terms of colors.
Terms of colors. Now, if we find the Apashtamba Shrauta Shutra, we also find the word Chitranta, that is the painted fabrics. In the Ramayana, Mahabharata also we come across various printed as well as the painted clothes. In the Kautilya's Arthashastra, we see that Arthashastra make mentions of 5 basic colors: red, yellow, white, blue and black. And we also find the Kumkuma or the saffron, the Neela, indigo, the creamy or the kirmis, the Gairika or the red ochre color, the Khanjana or the carbon black, that is the kajal we wear today. This kind of things which are mentioned in the Arthashastra. Pliny the Elder, he laments for the drain of wealth from Rome to India, because the Romans were very fond of Indian colors on their clothes. And also the periplus of the Erythraean Sea, and also later on by the Gupta period, Kalidasa in his Kumara Sambhava, in the Raghuvamsha, we find that he has depicted beautiful printed and painted clothes and beautifully depicted artistic excellence of tie-dyed clothes. In the Kalidasa's Raghuvamsha and Kumara Sambhava, we see that not only Kalidasa has mentioned that Indian dyers were capable of making various colored clothes, but also several patterns. But the patterns and patterns and the drawing motifs, these are different genres altogether. But now basically when we see the red colors, Now red color is a basic color in the Indian culture. Without this red color is one of the most important color, and now red color is associated with God. It is associated with God, mainly the mother goddesses. It is very much associated. Now red color is procured from plants, from various plants, like manjishtha is a very important source of this red color. Then the kampilaka, and now not only plants, we can procure red color from laksha or the lac, creamy or the kirmis, indragopa or the cochineal. These three are insects. What are these three insects? Laksha, creamy and indragopa or the cochineal. And the mineral products like the red ochre and the sindura. Like the first, we will discuss about the red colors that were procured from plant sources. Is the Rubia cordifolia is the scientific name of the manjishtha or the Indian madder. It is basically cultivated in the northern India, particularly in the Punjab province, and the plant root contains the organic compound. It's called alizarin, which produces the red color. So it is basically the root of the plant, which mainly contains a certain chemical alizarin, and which is a important coloring product. But this manjishtha, interestingly, as I was talking to you before, that all these plant products, the insects also, we find that in parallelly, not only they were dyes, but they were also the herbal medicines. They are used extensively in the herbal medicines, in the Ayurvedic medicines. Now Atharva Veda describes manjishtha as a creeping plant and as a plant which shelters laksha. Laksha, what is this? The lac is a resin basically. We can call this lac. What is, I don't know what is it is called in Hindi, lac. Lakha, I think. Lac. It's called lac. It's called lac. And it is, this red color is very pleasing, at the same time very bright. So the red product, it is from the Rubia cordifolia or the manjishtha, and it is used extensively in the textile fabrics. And the second is the kampilaka or the kamala powder. The scientific name is Mallotus philippensis. Now it is also a dye drug, used as dye as well as a Ayurvedic medicine, grown mainly in the northwestern provinces, but widely distributed as a evergreen tree throughout the tropical belt of India. It's a grainy powder or the rakta churnaka, which covers the plant body. So these are the two sources, plant sources, from which the red colors is produced. I have some photographs of this. So this is basically the manjishtha, which is grown in the Punjab province, and this is the root.
The root of manjishtha.
Yeah, from which the red color is. This is a dried root from which the red color is mainly procured. The next is the laksha or the lac. Now the Mackrindle is a classical writer. It's a Sanskrit is the laksha, or the lac is the English word, and the lak is the Hindi word for it. The Prakrit, it is called lakha. Now this interestingly, this laksha, we find it is also used primarily as a cosmetic in early India, on the nails, and like the nail polish we put today, and they used to put lac on the hands and the nails and feet. Kautilya refers lac as a varna dhatu. Greek also are using this lac. They were called as lacos, and it is one of the very important article that was exported from India, and it is found in the eastern African coasts, and it was coming from Barigaza, Ariaka, which is situated in the western coast of India, which were in those days it was coasts, port towns. And these lacs are basically grown taking the nourishment from the plant fluid. The female insect produces the resinous substance after its impregnation on the branches of the tree. So after the impregnation, these female insects, they basically secrete these resinous substances, and they get it deposited in the plants. So it is the lac or lac. Now the next important source of red color is the creamy or the kirmis. Interestingly, we find the kirmis from the medieval Indian literary sources, but at the same time the creamy is a word which we also getting in the early Indian sources, some of the lexicals. It was also a common red dyeing product in the Mesopotamian civilization, parallelly with the Indian culture. Now the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea identifies kirmis as a scarlet berry. So it is using the term scarlet berry, which breeds in the oak tree, and it produces the colors like scarlet, crimson and vermilion. So it suggests that the male kermes secretes its stored blood. Basically, it's the blood which it takes from the human being. It gets stored in its stomach, particularly and during the hatching time. These bloods are if we take out these insects, we can use we can get a red color, and that is used in dyeing of the clothes. Duarte Barbarossa, the Portuguese traveller of 16th century, find mention of kirmis grain at the culture. He is stating that in India the kirmis grain was produced in the places near Baroda in western India and Pulicat in southern India. Now next comes the cochineal insect. The insect is cochineal or the Indragopa. It is not only used as a red color for dyeing but also as a food color. So it's a bright red color or the scarlet color, and it is mainly lived on the cactus plant, and it takes the nutrients from the plant moisture, and during the hatching of the female body this dye can be extracted. So it is also very popular in the western countries, mainly in the West Indies, in the Mexico, in the Russia. This cochineal is very common. And interestingly, I was telling that the Coca-Cola company, even once when it started with the use of cochineal color as a food color for the red color tinge. Yeah. And next is there are certain flowers in India like the safflower and also the saffron, which we use as a yellow colors, but it is used as a yellow color in rest of the world, but Indian dyers use the safflower and the saffron flower as the red coloring flowers. Nice. Because you can procure both red color as well as yellow color from the safflower and the saffron. So they have the tinctorial properties both of two colors, one is red, another is yellow. Though yellow is extracted from safflower and saffron in the other parts of the world, but Indian dyers, they mainly procure red color from these two flowers. So another is the red sandalwood. Red sandalwood is we have a huge forest of red sandalwood in the state of Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka. So from the root of the red sandalwood we can procure red color, and yellow color, as we know, it's the turmeric. From the turmeric we can procure. So I have some photographs. It would have been interesting if we could show this photograph. This is the indigo flower. From Nila, basically the leaves from which the colors are extracted. This is the red color producing plant. This is the insects which is sticking on the leaves. This is again the insects which I was talking about, the kirmisi, the cochineal insects. This is again this red color insects. This is the red sandalwood. This is the red sandalwood tree. This is the Rubia cordifolia, red color producing. This is saffron. Saffron is a purple color flower with 4 stamen of yellow color. From the first extract you can have this yellow color, the second extract you can have the red color. This is the saffron flower with the stigmas are basically the saffrons. One plant can have maximum 4 flowers. This is the safflower. This is the safflower with the 2 tinctorial properties. This is the cochineal with the red tinge. The insects. This is also the cochineal insects. This is a cochineal insect. This is a yellow.
This is the turmeric basically.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. These are all the photographs which I have.
So Patru, what we do is basically the Ajanta photographs, where you think there is, which bring out the nature of varied colors in ancient India. We can see some of them, and then we can get into a question answer session with.
जहाँ तक कलर की बात की गई है, तो इसका हमें एविडेंस जिस तरह से लिटरेचर में मिलता है, उसी तरह से हमें इसका संदर्भ हमें आर्कियोलॉजिकल कॉन्टेक्स्ट में भी देखने को मिलता है। जिन कलरों का वर्णन जो है लिटरेचर में है, उसका डिपिक्शन हमें अजंता की पेंटिंग्स में, बाघ की पेंटिंग्स में मिलता है। इसके अलावा हमें और भी इंस्क्रिप्शंस में भी इसके वर्णन मिलते हैं, जैसे कि मैडम ने बताया कि येलो और वाइट कलर, इसका वर्णन हमें सारनाथ के लघु स्तंभ लेख में मिलता है, जिसमें ये मेंशन किया गया है कि संघ में भेद करने वाले को श्वेत वस्त्र पहना करके संघ से बहिष्कृत कर दिया जाएगा। मीन्स दैट टाइम वो लोग जो है श्वेत वस्त्र को जो है बहिष्कृत के तौर पे उसको मानते थे, और भिक्षु जो है पीले वस्त्र धारण करते थे, जो परंपरा आज भी कंटिन्यू कर रही है। दूसरा वर्णन हमें इंस्क्रिप्शन में, मंदसौर के इंस्क्रिप्शन में भी मिलता है, जहाँ रेशम के कपड़े की बुनाई करने और उसके इंपोर्ट करने का वर्णन मिलता है। उसके अलावा हमें आर्कियोलॉजिकल एविडेंस हमें एक्सकेवेशन से भी मिलते हैं, जिसमें एनबीपी पीरियड के जो है कुछ साइट्स में जो है हमें अंजन शलाकाएँ मिली हैं, जो कि ब्लैक जिसको कि ब्लैक डाई यानी काजल का एविडेंस उसमें मिलता है, जो कि उसमें जो एंटीमनी रॉड है उसमें सूट मार्क्स पाए गए हैं। तो इस आधार पर आर्कियोलॉजिस्टों का एक मानना है कि जो सूट मार्क्स हैं वो काजल के एविडेंस हैं, यानी ब्लू डाई के एविडेंस हैं। इसके अलावा सबसे महत्वपूर्ण हमें अजंता और बाघ की पेंटिंग्स में उसके डिपिक्शन मिलते हैं, जिस तरह से उस पीरियड के लोग कपड़े भी जो पहनते थे उस पर जो कैसे कलरिंग किया गया है, इसका हमें उसकी पेंटिंग्स में मिलता है। इसके लिए हम स्लाइड शो के माध्यम से बताना चाहेंगे। ये अजंता की पेंटिंग्स है, जिसमें रेड कलर जो है, इसमें जो है रेड कलर का कैसे डिपिक्शन किया गया है, इसमें उसके क्लोथ पे डिपिक्शन है। इसके अलावा नेक्स्ट यहाँ पे ब्लैक कलर का यूज किया गया है, ब्लैक और ब्लू इसके क्लोथ में हम दे सकते हैं। नेक्स्ट यहाँ पे वाइट कलर का भी यूज किया गया है, और वाइट के साथ साथ ब्लू का भी डिपिक्शन है। इसमें यहाँ पे ग्रीन कलर का यूज दिखाया गया है इस पेंटिंग्स में, कि ग्रीन कलर के क्लोथ कपड़े पे जो है डिपिक्शन करते थे। इसका मतलब ये है कि जो तत्कालीन समाज में जो लोग पहनावा पहनते थे उसका डिपिक्शन यहाँ पे मिल रहा है, यानी इन डाइज का प्रयोग जो है, इन कलर्स का यूज जो है उस समय को कपड़े पे किया जाता था। जैसे यहाँ पे एक टर्बन है प्रिंसेस के हेड में, वहाँ पे ब्लैक और वाइट का प्रयोग किया गया। इसमें ये बुद्धाज फिगर्स हैं, 3 तरह के कलर्स दिख रहे हैं। वाइट कलर सबसे फर्स्ट में है, बीच में ग्रीन और लास्ट में ऑरेंज है फर्स्ट रो में। उसके नीचे हमें ब्लैक और रेड कलर्स का डिपिक्शन मिल रहा है। यहाँ पे येलो कलर का है डिपिक्शन। यहाँ पे क्लोज तो नहीं है, ये एलिफेंट का मेन फिगर है। हाँ, यहाँ पे हमें जो है वाइट कलर का एविडेंस मिल रहा है। इसके अलावा जो अंजन शलाकाएँ हमें मिलती हैं उसमें सूट मार्क्स है, और इसके अलावा एक तंखा पेंटिंग्स भी हैं, जहाँ पे कि कपड़े पे ही जो है पेंटिंग्स बनाया जाता था, और उसमें ये सारे प्राइमरी कलर्स यूज़ किए जाते थे। इसके अलावा हमें टेराकोटा फिगर्स पे भी बहुत सारे कलर एविडेंस मिले हैं। इस तरह से जो है कलर का प्रयोग जो है हमें आर्कियोलॉजिकली रूप से भी प्रूफ हो रहा है, जो हमारे लिटरेचर में वर्णित है।
सो पत्रु, यू हैव अ क्वेश्चन टू आस्क सौमित्र।
ट्रेडिशनल जो डाइंग किया जाता था, क्या वो ड्यूरेबल होता था?
Yeah, definitely, because that was the main distinction factor between the Indian dyes and the dyes which was produced in the other parts of the world. The main characteristics of the Indian dyes was that it is very bright, soothing, at the same time they were very fast. So that was the credit goes to the master dyers of the India.
What is the tinctorial properties?
Tinctorial properties is basically the coloring properties of the certain organic or inorganic material. Suppose you have for example the palash flower that blossoms in the spring season. So it has a tinctorial property. You can make yellow out of the palash flower. You can make saffron out of the color that flower. That is basically the tinctorial quality or the property. Tinctorial quality is basically the coloring properties.
Okay.
We have had some basic points cleared up. These are slightly technical terms like tinctorial property or. What interests me is basically now in the sense that this one is this usage of both organic and inorganic matter in terms of say bringing out the tinctorial properties for creating the dye. Now in this situation this seems to be placing the dye industry in an interesting kind of relationship vis-a-vis the nature or with environment. Okay. Now how exactly does this work in the sense was there a sense of say both utilizing the utilizing and using the environment as well as protecting it? I mean, do you get some kind of a notion about that?
Yeah. That is the basic thirst. Because nowadays we are talking about ecology. We are talking about protecting our plant. In those days, it was the human being was more close to nature. So nature comes first to them. They were basically this chemical industry, this artificial things was not known to them. So what basically when the people are going to forests, they are hunting, they are plucking some flowers, they are plucking some fruits. So some colors is sticking to their hands. What is this? This is a color. So they invented on that.
Okay.
They invented on that.
So it's basically some kind of a discovery out of hunting gathering activity.
Hunting gathering activity. From that itself, why can't we rub this much in our clothes? So it will give some color. So from this with this hunt started. So they were more close to nature. We are nowadays talking about let's play Holi with the natural colors. So it's it's going our future. These people were very efficient in making the best use of the nature.
Quickly, I just wanted to know the contrast between east and west, which you talked about in terms of the preference of colors. The purple, for example, which is a preferable color in the west for the royalty, whereas the purple is not worn is stigmatized in India. So, I mean, when say, for example, trading used to take place between India and the West, did this kind of a distinction have any kind of a bearing? I mean, in the sense, say, for example, is purple color is demanded by the traders, actually, or they have to be taken there? It has to be taken there. Do you think it had a bearing on the trade? This kind of it? No, it did not.
No, it didn't, because the Manu is prohibiting the Brahmins from the use of purple color.
Okay, but the Brahmins are not involved in trade.
This was mainly the trading community who doesn't give so much of botheration to this kind of this thing, because
so that's interesting. Yes. Okay,
so it was mainly the traders.
Okay, so so thank you so much both Sanghmitra and Patru. We have had a very interesting session on color in early India. Color, as I said, I mean the whole critique, the critique within the Enlightenment knowledge tradition, that colors cannot be just purely constructed out of thought, as which Hegel did, and this lecture goes in a small way to demonstrate that how the process of color or understanding of color can be derived from, say, our interaction with both environment, with both environment's relationship with industry, as in the case of dyes, or through art and paintings and so on and so forth. And apart from that, the main thing is basically the processes which go into making of color. This demonstration goes in a very small way. Of course, obviously, the whole argument of Hegel about pure thought is a very big one, and we are obviously not going all out to critique it all at once, but we are trying to just demonstrate on the ground at a certain level that there is in the historical evidences there are evidences of how color was looked at, how color was used, how color was used in industry, how color was used in say paintings and so on and so forth, and that gives us an insight into the phenomenon that obviously color cannot be constructed out of thought, or theory of color cannot be constructed purely out of thought. On that note, we end this discussion. Thank you.